Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mitch Bell. I'm your host for Tall Tales with Taco. If you're one of the new 500 subscribers on my YouTube site, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate you. The Catalina video is going on fire around the world. I'm getting some great comments and great feedback for Coy and his crew up in Eugene, Oregon. If you have any interest in being a crew member with the finest PBY Catalina that World War II ever produced, drop me a line and we will get you hooked up with Coy and his group up there in Eugene. Also like to thank my good friends Brad and Charlie Williams. They own Omaha's Surplus downtown Fort Worth. I'll throw their stuff back up on the screen at the end of the show. But if you are interested or go back and look at the beginning, I had all their information on there. They hooked me up with really cool stuff like straps and World War II bags and things like that. Anything I need, go down there. They also do stuff online. All right, tonight, I've got an AV-8B Harrier pilot, probably one of the coolest jump jet things going on. Also, Flight of the Intruder pilot. It's not often that you get to meet somebody that's flown both platforms. He went from A6s to the AV-8B. He got out. He flies for a major airline. I'll let him say who he flies for. And then he got back into the Marine Corps, much like myself. And we're going to have a conversation about us civilian reservist guys raising our right hand and going back to go to the war. There are quite a few, like hundreds of thousands, that have done the exact same thing. Why? Because we believe in this country. You know, we're Marines first, and by God, we're going to serve our country, and we're going to be with other Marines. Without further ado, I'd like to bring on Colonel Tim Sluggo Blottisale and Blottisale. And Tim, how are you, brother?
Doing fine. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Colonel, man, outstanding. You did all your PME, brother. Good job.
Strange road, yeah, but we get down it. Yep.
Yeah, we were talking about, so, you know, we're only just a few years apart. You started OCS juniors in 1983. I was in 86. So I'm just trailing you by a couple years the whole way. But you've had a very interesting career as well. Kind of just give us a quick synopsis of your life in the Corps.
Well, I joined out of a regular state university, no academy or anything like that, and over a pitcher of beer and 2 tacos, ironically enough, and ended up in the Marine Corps, and I flew A6s first, and then after the Gulf War ended and my A6s were utilized, but not with us in them, and. Yeah. And I then switched to Harriers and flew Harriers for a few years, and then went to the training command and jumped to the airlines, and ended up at a major airline in October of '96 after that almost 11-year active duty career. Was completely out for 10 years and a month.
Yeah.
And then literally just to get a letter saying that I had offered, and playing my part as a citizen and a Marine, I offered to go back into the reserves. But of course, first I went on their website and I entered my information in this algorithm they had. And if your number was above a certain line, you'd be in the too old, thanks anyway category, or in the we'll be contacting you in the next 24-hour category. I was in the too old category. So I'm like, okay, just give me a letter then that says I offered, just as like a physical example, for my kids, grandkids, great grandkids in the future, right, to show them that, hey, look, you're a citizen. You need to step up when your country's hurting and they need people. This is your job. And it didn't really work out that way, because you got to sign everything, which, I mean, the red light was flashing a little bit in my head when I'm, signing all this. I request, at the prior service recruiter's office. But I was like, I'm too old. I saw it. It was on the website. I saw it.
Yeah, you were what, 40? How old were you then? 43?
44. Yeah.
44 when you got back in. Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, you're right. 43 when I was sworn back in, 44 when I got deployed. So
And you were captain.
when I left as a captain, and one of the things, when I left, they had, it kind of was a last ditch effort to try and stop all the Harrier guys from jumping ship, because we were. Right. They sent me a promotion warrant to major, and I was like, oh no, because if I sign that, I'm obligated for another 24 months minimum. Mm-hmm. And I was already actually hired at Delta Airlines by the time I got that. Oh, I said it there, Delta Airlines. And and so I wouldn't sign it. And all those years later, 10 years and a month later, when I'm expecting a 2 to 3 week response and I get a phone call within 72 hours, starting with "Great news, sir," I'm like, oh boy, okay, something's gone south here. They
signed a waiver. They found a waiver for you.
The first piece of paper they put in front of me was that damn promotion warrant to major.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I'll sign it this time. So left as a captain, but when I came back in, I think I was a captain for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I was a major, and that was in 2007. And that was one of those somewhat tense conversations to have with the wife when I came home and said, guess what I did today?
Okay, I'm in the same boat with you, and your wife is a goddess like mine. I'm telling you right now, Teresa, she doesn't watch my podcast, but my wife is an absolute angel, and I'll tell you why. I have a young daughter, she's 6 months old. No, maybe a year old. She's pregnant again with another girl coming on the way, and 9/11 happens, the squadron gets deployed, all of my friends are gone. And I felt like, I tried to explain it to her. I felt like, as a Marine, we train to go to war. And this is what we're waiting for, to go to war. But if you don't get to go, it's kind of like you're the horse that trains to run the Kentucky Derby. And all day long, all you do is train. And then they put you out to pasture, and then you watch all your friends go off and they get to run the Derby. And you're like, and then I think of Patton, that movie where he goes, what are you going to tell your grandkids that you shoveled shit in Louisiana? What did you do during the Great War, Granddad?
Yeah, kind of like, I wasn't actually thinking of those guys during that time, but I get it. And I kind of always alluded it to a football team.
Yeah.
You want to be on the team, you train all season, and then the season never comes, and so you get off the team, and next thing you know, the team's going to the Super Bowl, and do you want to go or not? And there is a way to get there, but it's going to cost you.
Well, what I got burned on was, when you're a reservist, what you guys don't realize, as reservists, we get a selection list. We're IMAs, IAs, or IA billets. So these billets have to be filled by the Marine Corps. And there are a lot of guys that have already done 2 or 3 tours. And if you fill a guy's spot, that means one officer doesn't have to go over to the war. Give him a break. That's cool. And so the neat thing is, you're like a free agent, and you're looking at these billets and you're going, that looks interesting. That looks interesting. You didn't get that?
I didn't have that experience. What happened is, when the prior service recruiter had informed me, hey, we got this phone call. And I'm like, and then of course I got it too. And I'm like, yeah, I'm aware. They kind of jumped the gun on that. They simply informed me, they're going, well, you're a, single seat JTAC, pilot, TAC air background. We're running out of you guys on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have enough JTACs. And so I was really, like, that day told that, hey, 3rd Anglico is drilling this weekend. They're only 20 minutes from your house, is their drill center. The CO already knows you got the call. He already knows who you are. He wants to meet with you Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? And I know what Anglico is. And I'm like, I'm 43. You know, these
I don't guys are tough.
I don't think I can keep up with them. You know, it's like, isn't that like small teams, like working alone or embedded with other indigenous forces or something?
Yeah.
I mean, what? And yeah, that's exactly what they are. And that's exactly where I got sent. I went down there, and the weird thing was when I walked in their ops office, and I'm looking for the I because the unit wasn't back from the field yet. I walked by the OPSO's office, and to my right is a guy that was a flight student of mine, but he's now a major.
Oh, wow.
And he sits there and he's like, Sluggo, you're still alive? What the hell are you know? And I was just like, wait, what are the odds of you being here, you know? And then we together went into the I office and met a guy who has turned into a lifelong friend of mine, Greg Martin. And he was a lieutenant colonel at the time. Great guy, literally one of the finest men I've ever met. And he was the one who actually ended up swearing me in because the CO was pretty busy with some disciplinary issues, I guess, with a couple of the guys. And so I got sworn in by the I lieutenant colonel. And then the unit Lieutenant Colonel Sega, great guy as well, met with me. And I of course, he made me meet with the XO first. And he said, okay, well, tentatively it's a yes. And I'm just like, what? You're driving this wagon, not me, you know, but yeah, tentatively it's a yes. He goes, I grabbed you when I saw that you'd showed up. But you need to go meet with the XO and he's going to interview you to make sure that we go through at least some of the normal standard way people come into the unit.
What's your PFT? When can you go to jump school?
I didn't even run a PFT yet, you know? And so I went up and met with the XO, which was like up in Glendale. He's like an investment banker. So I'm having lunch with a bunch of suits up there. And, these are all great guys. I'm like, well, the Marine Corps got some good people still in it and I like it. And it looks like they're, keeping the watch. And I, was then recommended to be joined. And so I said, okay, now what am I doing here? And I thought I was going to be an instructor or, something. Yeah, no. So they started sending me to schools. I went to 5 total in a year with them.
What year was that? In 2007?
2007. The first one was Mountain Warfare School. Which I was convinced very quickly they're going to see if I was going to have a heart attack or not, I think. And, I had been getting ready. I was thinking of running a marathon. So I was, thank God. And I had been hitting at that time it was called Bali's gym. Now it's like LA Fitness. But I've been hitting it like 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's just hurting myself as much as I could without injury, to try and just ramp up as much as possible. And I, actually enjoyed Mountain Warfare School. We had a lot of crazy, funny stuff happen up there. And, I was keeping up just fine with everybody. And, then they'd fall in behind me because I would lead up, through a hump up a hill or something. And I was like, I wonder how many of these guys I can smoke. And so I would just put my head down and just grind uphill. And I found about a third of them were thoroughly in the red by the time I got to where I was going. And I actually got kind of pissed at first because one of the guys was, Mr. Tough Guy with all the ink all over him, claiming he was former gangbanger, this and all that stuff. Bullying, some of the people a little bit. And he wasn't doing too well up that hill.
And the old man smoked him.
We did. And we actually had to spread load some of his gear. I ended up carrying some of his gear up the next hill. So when we got to the top and he was lagging still, I kind of had a controlled, engineered temper loss,
Yeah.
Where I grabbed what I was carrying, which was his cartridge belt with a couple items on it, and literally like whipped it around and threw it at him, kind of hit him in the chest with it. And I just berated him about, I am literally 20 years older than you. I'm as old as your father. In fact, depending on the behavior of your mother and where she was, I might be your father, And so, I go, you're all talk, man. I go, you're an empty uniform right now. You're useless.
Right.
But you better start keeping up and doing a little better, I'm sending you home as a fail, and you can go do your AT somewhere else. And I was not nice about it at all, and then just kind of walked away. And anyways, he I don't know what that did to him, but
got him motivated.
He did pretty well, and he ended up finishing the course just fine. And it seemed like kind of particularly important to him that I was no longer disappointed in him, which I was at first, and it's kind of like, okay, there's a different relationship here. He's acting like one of my kids. If I would get mad at them about something, then they want to prove themselves to me. And I was like, maybe I am 20 years older than him.
Okay, you made your highway.
But yeah. And so, but then I ended up going to EWTG PAC and the WTI course, and some other odds and ends. And then we, kind of the capstone thing was we ended up going to Fort Irwin and the big, through the Ruba and out into the box with the Army. And kind of reminded me of, you got to watch yourself around the Army. I mean, there's great Army units, and then there's Army units that you're kind of convinced probably shouldn't deploy. And, they have a quality control problem, in my opinion, because some of the units we worked with were great. Others, like the one that I was most concerned with, actually had a couple guys killed out there during their training exercise just due to sheer lack of supervision. And they're driving these Stryker monstrosities at like 70 miles an hour, and then they lose sight of the guy ahead of them because of the dust, and the guy ahead of them slammed on the brakes, and they literally slam into the vehicle ahead of them at crazy speed, and both turret gunners almost get torn in half because they're sticking out of the roof. Everyone else has got broken bones and missing teeth and concussions, but the guys in the turrets are dead. Yeah. And it's like, there's a leadership problem here. This should not be happening. I mean, for Christ's sake, all you're doing is a movement to an encampment. Yeah. This is, you're in California, no one's shooting at you. What's going to happen when it really gets bad, Right. Yeah. You can start rolling them down hills.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was, very concerned about some of those. So, no one's useless. You can always use them as a bad example, and so we were pointing out, to my guys going, look, this is what happens when the staff NCOs are not doing their jobs and the officers are not in control of the staff NCOs. People die, and needlessly as well. So again, I felt like dad, kind of like, hey son, look at you, and it served its purpose. But
I could say in Afghanistan, I had a really good time with my Army counterparts, because there was only like 8 Marines, maybe 12 total in Kabul with the Army. But there is a difference. I mean, I noticed the difference. I mean, we all go through Quantico. We go through the same OCS. You went through Camp Upshur in 83. I went in 86. Yep. We had the same experiences, on the crying ourselves to sleep on the racks that night after getting thrashed, but in the heat of Quantico. But those guys, they go through college somewhere, they go through the academy, or they go through ROTC, National Guard, OCS. There's so many different ways to get in, or officer and enlisted, that I found there was a big difference.
Yep.
In people just don't have that commonality that we do.
Yeah,
we're smaller, so that's it.
Yeah. That helps a lot. I mean, large organizations, a lot of them are plagued with the same problems. But, like the couple of Army units we worked with, a couple of Stryker battalions later on in my Iraq deployment, they were great. They're very disciplined. They're very organized. They wanted very much to help us. And once we kind of understood who was really in tactical control of the situation, which was me, even though they outranked me, if you didn't do it my way, go away. In which, I can talk more about how we arrived at that. But so when I was at Mountain Warfare, go ahead. Oh, when I was up in
you volunteer. All right, so you're in Mountain Warfare.
Mountain Warfare School, and it's a 2-week program, and we had a day and a half off in the middle of it. just to kind of let your feet heal a little bit, which, I don't know what a day is going to do for that. But so I was raised a certain way and I do things a certain way. And so it's like, we're going to Tahoe, because we're up at Bridgeport. It's not that far. Like, we're going to go to Tahoe and we're going to booze up and have a great time and come back and I'm going to murder you on the hills. That's the way it's going to work. And this is how we roll. Work hard, play hard, suck it up, buttercup, And so we all hit Tahoe, and I had certain rules out, like you have to make it to the van parking lot by a certain time, or we're all going to get to punch you one time each when we do find you. And then, no one's going to get too crazy. And we had designated drivers and everything. And we had these rental vans and rental big SUVs. And everybody, followed the rules. And except we were pretty wrecked. I mean, just, yeah. And so when we got back to our barracks at Bridgeport, I mean, we had all thrown up at least once, And the SUV that I was in had like puke all down the side of it, probably the other side too, but I didn't have the wherewithal to look out that side, And I stepped out of the passenger seat as we pulled up to the barracks, and I kind of was standing there bent over with my hands on my knees, and I threw up again right in the gravel parking lot. And I just started laughing. I go, yep, tomorrow morning is coming in 3 hours. And that's when Reveille is. So sleep fast. And then I looked up, and the CO and Sergeant Major had made a command visit and were waiting for us. And we're standing right next to their van watching this debacle occur.
Right.
And I just kind of looked up and spit on the ground a couple of times. And I'm like, well, you can't really talk your way out of this one, And I just said, hey, good evening, gentlemen. Sorry. This is the way I roll, man. And the Sergeant Major's like, the barracks is a wreck. There's shit everywhere. And, this is in the age that guys still had VHS,
Right.
And if you remember, when you got to the end of the VHS on some of the machines, if you set it on auto replay, it'll just rewind and then start over again and play again.
Right.
Well, the guys had a VHS of porn that they had left playing in the VCR with the TV in there. So not only are the barracks trash, but there's porn on, constant, 24 hours a day in there going. And the Sergeant Major really didn't like that much. And he was
I saw a movie about this. It was called Heartbreak Ridge.
Well, I'm just sitting there like, you can't talk your way out of this, And he goes, I have my concerns, sir, and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of look at him and I'm like, this is me, man. This is the way it works. And I got nothing, but I got to go hit the rack. I'm exhausted and I'm shit-faced. Good night,
Yeah, but it's okay, because the next day when you're doing the stuff, you're so wasted that you don't feel
the thing
the pain.
is, I was in my 40s, and you know what? It just doesn't hurt that much anymore, because I don't think we can feel everything, and the younger guys, their bodies are much healthier. They feel every bit of pain, and they were absolutely dying, and I said, just keep drinking a bunch of water and keep up. You'll be fine, And so we drove them. I admit we drove them pretty hard, and they all did pretty good. But there was a lot of puking going on. And by the time we got to our goal for the day, the CO and Sergeant Major who had tagged along to watch this parade, they walked up, and the CO goes, "Yep, you're taking the next debt to Iraq. You're just the guy."
So how long after that? How long after that were you over in Iraq?
Less than a year.
Wow.
It was 13 months. 13 months from when I got sworn in again till I was over there. It was March 2008. Yeah, we were in Iraq.
And where were you in Iraq?
Well, funny you should ask, because not where I was told I was going to be. We got into Al-Assad, and then, we got, some different gear, and we got a bunch of night vision stuff that was being passed from unit to unit over there, because it was the latest and greatest stuff. Really amazing goggles, actually. Mm-hmm. And
same ones that we gave the Afghans.
I'm sure, yeah. or a newer generation the Afghans have over us. But so I was, told we're going to Ramadi. So it was just me. I was the SALT, which is an 8-man team. And then I had 2 fix or fire power control teams, which are 4-man teams. And the corpsman would kind of be a floater between the fix, between 2 different SALTs. So I didn't have that many guys with me. And Ramadi was where I'm going.
Right there.
Yep. There we go. And so that's just part of the team. That's the boys. And the gunny there is in the middle. He's a guy. He and I ended up going round and round, literally, later in the dead, which is like a whole nother story. But yeah, great guy, great leaders. And except for the gunny and the Cedillo on the far right, the rest are all Lance Corporals. And I had a whole bunch of Lance Corporals, and they were honestly superstars.
Right. Look at all that gear.
Yeah. Yeah, the Anglico guys are not poor. We got a blank check. We got whatever we wanted. And
I think we all shrank about a half an inch from wearing all that stuff. I know I did.
We had a pack animal course we did at Mountain Warfare School, and we learned about percentage of body weight as a load. And they referenced the British pamphlet called The Soldier's Load, where they did some studies, and they figured out basically 1/3. If your weight that you're carrying in total, clothes, boots, rifle, not just the pack, but if your total burden is more than 1/3 of your body weight, you're not going to perform well, and you're going to be degraded. And if you kept to 1/3 or less, then you could use the basic thing of 3 hours over flat terrain, or 3 miles an hour over flat terrain, 2 miles an hour over hilly terrain, 1 mile an hour in the mountains, and they should be ready to fight at the end of a 20-mile hump. And that was what you had to stay within. Well, okay, I only weighed like 183 pounds. All right. My vest with my helmet, water, ammo, M4, M9, all the gear was pushing 125 pounds. Well, if I only weighed 183 pounds, we're a little bit more than 1/3 here, and I'm like, so in that little soldier's load thing, it said you're not going to do well if you load yourself up more than that. And I don't think the guys at the top have read A Soldier's Load was all I could think, because we had all that gear on, and it just got worse when we got into the heat, and then we dismount, and I mean, we were going through 2.5, 3 gallons of water a day per man, and we're dying slowly.
Right.
It's just too much. But anyway, so we got to Iraq, went to Ramadi with my little group, and all the little groups spread out all over Anbar province. And I was, you're doing the RIP, which is going to take 2 or 3 days to sign for all your gear and weapons. We had all this encrypted gear we had to double check and everything. And it just, well,
for the folks out there, a RIP TOA is where one unit comes in, replaces another unit, they leave and rotate out. So
yeah,
we understand. I do have some people that sit there and go, "What's a RIP?"
Yeah. Relief in place. So we were expecting 3 to 4 days, and I'd informed Al-Assad it's going to be 3 or 4 days, and that was fine. Well, so a day and a half after we get there, so we barely started the RIP, we get the call at midnight saying, well, the fire watch wakes me up, says there's a colonel from Al-Assad on the phone. I'm like, okay. Of course, I think it's someone messing with me, of course, So I go over there, and I wasn't like entirely appropriate on the phone, thinking it was one of my peers just waking me up for fun, And then I realized, no, this is the chief of staff on the phone. And we are told that we have 2 hours to get to this grid and meet up with this Iraqi general, and that we are to accompany the military transition team, the MIT that we were embedded with, and that we were going to meet with this Iraqi brigade and probably only take 1 battalion at first, with the other 2 following, and we're going to Basra. And I'm like, I know where Basra is, and that's in the British zone, hundreds of miles from here. What, this doesn't make any sense. And he goes, take all the ammo, food, water, and fuel you can. Well, we have these Humvees, and I don't know how much crap you can fit in a Humvee, but there's not that much room in it, Humvee. So we went in the kind of back lot real quick once I woke everybody up, and apparently our previous cohorts had stolen a couple Army trailers. They were like under camo netting back there, like hidden. And I'm like, okay,
we're spray painted USMC now.
Oh yeah, and it was like wasn't even the right color spray paint. Hey, can you close the blinds real quick? And anyways, and so I said, hook them up, let's get everything. And the military transition team was a great bunch of Marines, and so they were just jumping through hoops because they were doing the same thing we were, except they didn't have all this encrypted gear and they weren't in a rip. They were just continuing through. We were quite blind. I had to leave 3 or 4 guys back and then take everybody else that I could and pick up anybody else from the surrounding debts that I could and just roll south. And we ended up with a small core guys that we stayed with the whole time. But when we met up with this Iraqi, we found all the officers spoke English with a British accent. They were all Londoners, all independently wealthy. Our general is a multimillionaire. They didn't take a salary. They took the salary and divided it up among the Jundi, which are the young enlisted Iraqis. So this is completely different than what I was told to expect,
Mm-hmm.
And they were seemed very, very sharp. I was like, okay, this is different. And we were rolling pretty quick, and we only took 1 battalion. And we were getting hit by IEDs and a couple of pre-planned mortar ambush attacks before we even got to Basra. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
We'd already lost fuel truck, some of the other trucks. And
oh, wait a minute, was this?
No, that's later. That's later. That's one of our not so favorite places. But when we got to Basra, we met with the Scots, and they gave us the intel brief, gave us something to eat, fueled us up, and then we went right into the next morning, right into an area we just called the Gates, which were these big, giant Arabic arches that Route Tampa rolls through, big north-south interstate, if you want to call it that. And there was a police compound there that the Iraqi army was trying to wrest away from the militia.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of disturbing thing when we got with the intel brief, besides the fact that they informed us that all the British forces, by parliamentary order, had pulled behind the wire and abandoned all their posts in southern Iraq. And within 24 hours, all the major cities and the oil pipelines had fallen to the militias. And that's why we were down there. And I was like, what kind of insane move is that? How the hell are you going to control a city from a fob miles outside the city limits?
Right.
I mean,
was this it?
Yeah. Those are the guys that we went down. They were great guys. To the man, they wanted to help. They wanted to fight. They wanted to be right there with us. They were somewhat embarrassed, I think, that we were down there because they were no longer being allowed to do their job.
Politics taking over military.
Yeah, and the British officers and their senior guys were bending over backwards to do everything they could to help us, but they were constrained by their government. And I was like, well, I feel you, but this doesn't do me any good. Okay, so when they gave us the brief on the one particular militia they're most concerned with, there were a bunch down there called the JAM, or the Jaish al-Mahdi militia. And they worked for Makata al-Sadr. He was a kind of weird, freaky dude with like a Lincoln beard. And his father was an imam, but he was not. His father was kind of a martyr of sorts. And people were following Makata al-Sadr, and he was totally funded by the Iranians. All Iran, all day. And we learned to deal with that and hate that like you can't imagine. But the JAM was in excess of 20,000 people.
20,000.
20,000. Okay. I had 420 Iraqis and 34 Marines. And we were the ones going in and attacking them. And I'm like, I wasn't a math major in college, but I can count on my fingers. This isn't going to work out very well, you know? And so it was like, holy crap.
In 2008, we were starting that whole surge and everything. So did you, at least you had good air support? I hope you had Cobras, swacking guys, and Apaches.
It didn't work out like I expected. I mean, yes, we did, but it was a little, the order and the priority of what came to us was a little different than what I would have predicted. When we first went in there, we got in the compound. The Iraqi army had literally physically stormed the compound and went over the walls. I mean, just went in there, and it was like the OK Corral in there because it's close quarters. Everyone's weapons on full auto, and it's spraying in all directions from everybody. And they lost, I believe we had 12 killed and almost 40 wounded, just taking this little police compound about as big as half a football field.
Wow.
I mean, there was literally blood splattered all over the place in there. I mean, everywhere. And they were stacking the bodies like cordwood in the corner, figuring out how we're going to get rid of them, because you can't have those in there with us at that close. We're all going to get sick, you know.
Right.
And,
how many guys were in there?
Well, we ended up with probably about 80 to 100 Iraqis in this place, and then the Marines. And very quickly,
no, I mean bad guys. How many the Hodges were in?
The dead, the bad guys, a little over 100. A little
Wow.
over 100. Yeah, and they were all dead. Amazingly, none of them were wounded. So it's just phenomenal. But
good.
Anyways,
you taught those guys how to shoot well, right?
I was like, wow, think you got them? Yeah, maybe. But so we ended up getting literally with them, the whole militia from the city of Basra all came to where we were to try and immediately push us back out. So we literally had a 4.5-day firefight that never stopped. I found out that if I don't sleep for 3 days, I actually start hallucinating. I mean, who knew? Okay, I didn't know. All right, but I found out because we weren't sleeping, and it never stopped. Ironically enough, except for 30 minutes around dinner time every day.
When everybody was going to prayer.
No, there wasn't a lot of praying. No, not a lot of that. And just as an aside, the brigade I was embedded with, the 211 Quick Reaction Force, was working directly for Maliki, the prime minister. And it was a moderate. They required to be religiously moderate to be in this brigade. They're handpicked. The full brigade that eventually came down there was a little over 1,450 Iraqis. And in 7 months, traveling all over the country with those guys, not one time did I see a soldier pray.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about your allies. I'm talking about the bad guys, because it always
the militia,
seems like they go out and they go hit the thing and get kind of wild. And after.
Yeah, the militia was, it was a mixed bag. The snipers, one of which almost killed me on arrival. Literally, my gunnery sergeant, that's one of the many times he saved me. My gunnery sergeant was like, "Don't put your head over that wall, sir." And I'm like, "Look, there's a guy over there. He's picking off the Iraqis one by one. I got to see what I'm looking at," kind of thing. I put my head up for like 3 seconds, maybe 4, not 5. Started to put my head back down, and he put a round within about 2 inches of my right ear. And we figured out he was about 800 meters away when we finally got him. And so I'm like, that doesn't sound like an Iraqi sniper. That's somebody else. That's a mercenary or something.
Yeah.
That was a good shot. I don't think I could have made that shot that fast, personally. Yeah. And so when we finally got that guy, I actually got him with the very first of a gazillion airstrikes that I control. But the very first one, after he shot at me, then we had a machine gun out in town just start hosing down our position like it was water in the garden or something. And I couldn't really move. And it wasn't going real well at that moment. And so I, quickly hailed anybody who would answer on the radio, and a couple of Hornets, a couple F-18s were transiting my area almost on their fuel ladder. coming down from ISR in the north. And they answered up, and they heard all this in the background, and I didn't actually get a proper 9-line brief out, and I just told them where I am, what's going on, I can't move. And, and I go, do you see my position? And he rolled his, got a big split S with the F-18, and he goes, is my nose on you? And I kind of looked up and went, holy crap, that guy's got his nose on me, and I go, the buildings about 300 meters to our north, in that system of buildings, every southwest facing window is suspect right now. And he pulled his nose off of me, and I just go, cleared hot. That was it. That was the whole brief. And that Gatling gun is really loud when it's in front of you going off, just saying. But anyways, he did an amazing amount of airmanship, and of course, everybody has got to watch the impacts, and he walked his rounds like right up the spine of the building, really pressed the target, and then totally vaped the wing for maximum burner pull off. I thought he hit the roof. He was so close,
wow.
But he didn't, and then he goes spiraling up, and I look, and here's his wingman right behind him. Clear him hot. He does the same thing. And then they both tell me, we're on the fuel bladder. We're bingo. We got to go right now. We're done. Best of luck, but he can still hear, in the radio, everything going on in the background. In the meantime, my machine gunner that I was sitting right next to, the Iraqi, had this big dish gun, and he was just seeing if he could melt that thing,
right.
firing all the militia guys. I could barely hear anybody. Well, it turns out one of those pilots was the XO of the squadron. And he went back out to the Truman, and he landed, and he told them, hey, right over in Basra, right there, we got a JTAC in big trouble. And so they were, I guess, headed for a port call. They turned around and went to surge ops for 72 hours for us.
No kidding.
So that was awesome. We had constant.
What ship was that?
The Truman.
Nice job, guys.
So it was great. I couldn't believe it. And the other weird deal that I found out later, you don't really know all the moving parts behind you sometimes. But General Petraeus had designated us as the #1 effort, and the AWAC had actually relocated down towards the south where we were, and was flying in British airspace to make sure we had burn through straight up and could talk to him all the time through all the because we were getting jammed like crazy. I mean, nothing was working, but we could burn straight up and talk to them. There's a lot of static though. But anyway, so we had all that going on, and then within a day, we had B1s, we had a U2 dropping digital photos to us. We had all the Hornets we could possibly use, and they were coming one section an hour, like continually, 24 hours a day until we said stop,
Wow.
And it was like I had all the air power you could ever want. And of course, there's a very steep learning curve because, I've been out forever, and have never been in this position before. I mean, we are literally on the horns of a dilemma here, so to speak, because we are completely surrounded, and they are hitting us with mortars that their first mortar shot, I don't know how much you've worked with mortars, but when a mortar platoon sets themselves up and they have I don't know if they use the fateds or what they were using, but when they're basic, in best calculations, the first round impact is usually in the general area, and then they correct from there. The first round impact off the Iraqi mortar teams, I think the worst one was 150 meters. Most of them are inside that for the first hit, and they're correcting from there. So, I mean, they're going to be on us in a minute or two, and we're all dead if we don't shut those tubes down as soon as they start firing.
This is the militia guys.
Yeah. And
so did you have counter battery radar or anything to assist you on that?
Yes and no. We had the Brits had counter battery radar. We didn't run heavy like that. We're super light. But the Brits couldn't see a lot of the mortars if the dust was bad, and the dust storms were almost daily. But the militia had figured out that the counter battery radar can't see 60 millimeter at all, no matter what. And so it's too small. Yeah. And so they just pummeled us with that crap. And then when we're all busy trying to find the 60 millimeter, then here came the 120 millimeter.
Mm.
And I don't know how many people have been on the receiving end of that artillery piece, but it is enough to change your life, man. Okay, the shock wave coming off that thing, if it's close, it'll actually tip your armored Hummer up on two wheels and slam it back down. I mean, and that's if it missed you. You know, it is a concussive event.
I was gonna say, you got cussed all the time, didn't you? I mean,
well,
the whole time.
I only count the ones where I couldn't stand up right away.
Right.
You know, not the ones where you get your head rattled and the world spins a little bit and you brace yourself on a wall and feel a little sick to your stomach. You can't count those. I couldn't. And of the ones that I couldn't stand up for a couple of minutes, you're literally on your hands and knees and you're having trouble doing that. And a lot of times you throw up too. 8. I got 8 of those that I counted.
Wow. Yeah.
But anyway, so we had a problem with the mortars. I mean, so what we realized very quickly is that, number one, we no longer had the initiative here. The militia clearly was in tactical control of this fight and the pace of battle. And they were, basically keeping us in a combined arms dilemma here. They would have the snipers keep us down and really limit our movement around our area because they were elevated. And then the machine guns would, spray and pray and see how many of us they could kill or wound at really arbitrary times on purpose, because they kept relocating, knowing that if I saw that muzzle flash, they were going to collect a 500-pound bomb in about 6.5 minutes or less, which is about as fast as I could go. And that's fortunate for me. My proficiency was rapidly improving. And so we were averaging 6.5 to 7 minutes from seeing a target to hitting it. And obviously there was nobody over me. I'm, hundreds of miles away from any COC that would control me. The Brits had a JOC down there, but they had no authority over me, and reminded me of that a couple of times, that I was my own clearing authority, which is just enough rope to hang yourself when you start getting armchair quarterbacked at a later time. But so I was given my team's permission to drop and given myself permission to drop, and my initials are the ones given to all the airplanes.
Did you have any UAV assets overhead?
24 hours a day, 24 hours a day, sometimes 2. And all I can say about the Predator, because we didn't have the Reaper yet, all I can say about the Predator is that is the only reason we succeeded. We were hitting most of our close air support attacks were complex targets in urban environments around us. And we could see assembly areas. We could find the tubes. You can go white hot, black hot as you're scanning and see that hot tube. It's an unusual item to be in a neighborhood full of Iraqis in your adobe village, concrete city, to see a hot tube. There aren't any. So unless it's a mortar tube. So we had those up, and I would be running some of them, and then I'd have some of my other JTAC. A guy down there named Dan Jarl, Captain Jarl. He's now a colonel. Great guy. He was down there as my relief JTAC, thank God. Or I had to sleep at least 2 hours occasionally, stop hallucinating. I was really, really worried about making a mistake, obviously.
Yeah.
But the Predators were awesome. And with the 120, we had to kill that one. The 60s, we could hunt them down, and we learned, like I said, your learning curve is pretty steep. The first bomb we dropped was a low collateral damage bomb, because it was, next to other houses. We're trying to hit this one guy on the roof that was firing at us. And all I can say is whoever signed off on that bomb as a piece of ordnance to have in theater should literally get kicked in the nuts. Okay, that was absolutely ineffective.
Which one was this?
The low collateral damage bomb, the GBU 34 version 4 is a piece of crap. And so they hits the target, but it's like you're dropping a freaking bucket of dirt on them or something. And the sniper was on the roof, clear as day. We hit this low collateral damage bomb with an instantaneous fuse to blow the dude off the roof, right?
Right.
Yeah, no. It hit the roof and went off like kind of in the floor, in the roof itself, and partially into the upper deck of the building. And the same guy didn't move. He kind of looked behind him at the hole in the cement, picked his rifle up, and I see the muzzle flash on my rover feed, looking through the Predator as the bullet goes over my head. And I'm like, okay. And it was a B1. And I turned it around and I said, don't ever drop another one of those again for us, ever. Only the version 1s, only the 500-pounders. And I go, same brief, call in with a heading. And he did, cleared them hot again. And I think it pretty much hit the same hole that the other one did. And it blew the whole top floor off the building. And that guy was...
I've got something for you. Your video, unfortunately, did not... It wouldn't upload. It was a configuration problem. But I have a picture from Iraq. And that building, they got attacked by the guys. There were about 20 dudes in that building. And you can just look right at the top of the building. The first JDAM dropped straight down and blew up. And if you look right up at the top, that's not Photoshop. There's a second JDAM coming down.
Yeah, that's it.
Those guys had a bad day. But I remember the story the lieutenant said, I didn't feel like having my guys rush across all that open ground to go fight these guys. Hell no. He called in F-18s and they took care of business. Yeah.
I would have done the same thing or probably worse. And, it's, so the 500-pounders work. You can't have a politically correct bomb. I mean, it either works or it doesn't. And that we never saw another one of those. It wasn't even offered. So they do listen to you,
That's good.
And then we used a Hellfire off the Predator one time. And they said, yeah, there's this new bitchin' thermal barrack thing. It's gonna wipe them out, man. And I'm like, okay, I kind of like the old blast frag, but whatever. Sure, give me your newfangled things. It only carries one, so obviously that's all I got. Right. And we were firing at a 60 millimeter team, and that thing was so close, the Predator, that there must have been like no laser dispersion because the Hellfire actually center punched the tube.
Wow.
Actually hit it and went off, and 5 Iraqi militia are down. And as I'm watching, within a minute, 3 of them get back up, drag the other 2 off, and they're gone. And I'm like, okay, what was that warhead? Don't ever give me another one of those. If you show up with another thermal barrack, I swear to God, I'm going to come find you. And, it's like, give me the blast frag. I need to kill them. I cannot beat them up and have them hit me again tomorrow or later tonight, which is what that thing was allowing. Because if it's not in an enclosed space, that thing's worthless.
Right.
So it's like, great, give me the old one. Don't give me the new one. And that was kind of a theme during our experience down there. But we ended up, pushing the militia back. We ended up with all sorts of airstrikes, strike after strike after strike on all the targets around us. And we kind of blew our way back out so we could get in and out finally and drive back out to the British airfield and their FOB and come back in and not die.
How long were you out there?
Well, it took us a little over 2.5 months to take the city of Basra. But this first police compound, at the end of 4.5 days, coming into the 5th day, what had happened is that that one video that I guess you said didn't play, the explosion, if you notice, kind of went up like a chimney because it's very hard, compact clay, almost like sandstone soil. And our intel was 100% accurate because we were recruiting local Iraqis to join the army, and they'd go to boot camp, and this has already happened. And then they come back, and they're from the neighborhoods around us. And so the Iraqi S2 was a genius, really. He was a brilliant young man. And he would put them back in civilian clothes. He had made up false papers showing that they were working for the Filipinos on the oil lines and sent them back home with this little GPS clicker thing where if you clicked, it would give you the 10-digit grid of where you were. It's just a little push button thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd walk around the corner, pick up your Iraqna phone, and you'd call the Iraqi S2 standing next to me, and you'd read them the grid and tell them what you saw. And so they tell these guys, go back home and walk around your neighborhoods, go visit your friends and cousins and tell us what you see.
That's ballsy.
And it was very timely. And it was so accurate. We had gotten the word that a heavy weapon big enough to fire right through our concrete barriers around the police station was going to be placed at 1300, right behind this mosque that was built. The position was going to be built against the mosque, knowing that we were not allowed to damage a mosque.
Right.
That was actively having services. And they weren't in it, so it wasn't militarized. So they kind of were like sea lawyering our own policy on us, you know.
Sure.
And then he said, and not only that, at 1500, the ammo is coming. And they told us what kind of truck was bringing it. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of detailed. They're probably bullshitting us, you know. But as we watch, a little before 1300, this long, ginormous gun is being emplaced in this little circle of sandbags against the back of the mosque. And I'm like, holy crap. And as we're watching it, they have a box of ammo, and it's big. I mean, the cartridges, you know, like, I'm like going, good God, man, that's like 30 millimeter. And I'm like, that is going to punch right through our stuff. We're done. Mm-hmm. And we got to take it. I don't care if it hits the mosque. Done. We got to hit it. This is not an option. So we had an F-18 overhead as usual. And so I said, this is your target. And we went through the whole thing about, for God's sakes, aim for the outer side of that sandbag. Don't hit the mosque, right? You know, or I'll insult your parents. So anyways, he did an amazing drop. And the last thing, as we're watching this on live feed, which is, you know, the beauty of the Predator, you can also sometimes see it from the pod on the like the Lightning or whatever, mm-hmm. on the fighter, but not always. And the last thing this guy did is he looked straight up, and I think it hit him in the balls. I don't know, but it looked like that's about where this bomb hit, and it punched into the sandstone soil. And when it exploded, it blew it straight up like a cannon, including him. We found his boot with a foot still in it, you know, about 100 yards away. But, you know, he was gone. The weapon was gone. The position was blasted. And it was right between the big 4-lane highway and the wall of this mosque. And so we found out later from our Jundi out there that the locals viewed that as me. They knew there was a Marine major controlling all the airstrikes.
Right.
We had no OPSEC whatsoever. And they knew that I was doing that, and that was, I'm sure, his strike, and that they viewed that as me committing a public execution. And the militia was, you know, in that neighborhood up there. Obviously, they're building this position next to the mosque. And it cracked the rear wall of the mosque and broke the foundation, but it didn't fall down. But the imam was furious, you know, who cares, you know. And the tribal leader up there at that point, this is what ended the 4-day siege, or almost 5-day, was that the tribal leader was furious that we were dropping bombs that hit his mosque. Right. In his opinion, though technically it didn't. And he ordered one man from every household to take the AK, because every household in southern Iraq, I don't know if it was true in the north, but in the south, all the Shia, every single home had an AK in it with a 30-round clip. Oh, every single house. Yeah. And I think that was by law, because the police were so ineffective to stop home invasions and all that kind of stuff. So what that really meant is a tribal leader could put however many homes he had, he could put that many men on the street with an AK and a full clip, 20 minutes. You know, just put the phone tree out. And that's what he did. And so they then attacked the militia. So like all hell broke loose up there, but no one was shooting at us. But there's a lot of shooting. I mean, there's RPGs flying around. You can hear like heavy dishkas going off. And it's like, what is happening? So we watched it on the Predator, and they were dragging people, young 20-something guys, out of houses, pulling them in the middle of the street. And this older guy was taking an AK and blowing their head off and then leaving the body right there. And they're stacking them down the middle of the street. like they're lining up railroad ties. And they slaughtered the militia that was north of us. And then and then all the shooting stopped. And it was like crickets, man. It was dead silent, except for an occasional, here, let me plug in real quick. Sorry about that. Except for an occasional bird or something. It was just like chirp, chirp, chirp.
So no snipers.
Nothing. Everything had stopped. And then this kid comes out on a bicycle that's like squeaking. And he's riding towards us and he looks scared to death. We make him stop about 50 feet away, and he comes up with a note saying that no more bombs in our neighborhood. The militia is dead. And I'm like, I believe him. Okay, this guy's not lying. A lot of times, you get told some kind of fairy tale, but it's like, no, I recorded it on the hard drive of the computer. I'm like, mainly to make sure that CENTCOM knew I didn't do this. Okay, the Marines did not execute all these people. Right. This was the tribe that did it.
Right.
And so evidence, and then it just stopped, and the battle was over, and we held the gates. And the militia was licking their wounds and regrouping. And so we pressed them. We left the gates, left a contingent behind. We had another Iraqi battalion join us, and the third one was coming in the next day or two. And we pushed into the city and went into a place that we just nicknamed the TV station. And that's where you saw the fiery picture right was there. Yeah, that's where we got mortared. Again, the mortars, always the mortars. At the TV station, and that if you look closely, you can see one of our MRAPs was right next to that thing when it went off, and the tires are burning.
Yep.
On the MRAP, yeah. And that little building that's next to it was the only cover we had in that entire field. Jeez. And if you look between the fire and the utility truck far to the right, you can see sort of a bit of a berm of like dirt. Okay, that was our first berm that we pushed. We had an armored bulldozer with us, and we had the driver push up a berm around us to give us some physical obstacle between us and the militia, because we were worried about them just literally driving right into our area and self-detonating or something.
Right.
But they'd typically stop a lot of our movement with snipers and machine guns, try and hold us in place so that the mortars could sight in on us. And there's me at the TV station controlling some of the air power that we were using to methodically wipe them out. And if you can see in front of me and out the door there, that's the Iraqi S2 officer standing there, and one of the Jundi behind him that had just reported where one of the snipers was. How
about this? Who's the guy on the right?
The guy on the right, that's Gunny Sergeant Real. Yeah, he's I hope he's not listening right now when I tell you that he's actually one of the greatest human beings I've ever met in my life.
Awesome.
And he never lost his sense of humor the whole time, which, yeah, that's probably an understatement. I think we were telling jokes and pulling pranks on each other the entire time. There's one of the positions we were in, and you can see the size of the caliber of some of the weapons they were firing at these guys, hitting the upper side of that thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the lower part of that was completely splattered. This is the wall where the sniper put a round right by my ear here. And we had pushed most of the cartridges, because it was about 8 inches deep in cartridges on the floor there. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there with the Iraqi S2 and some of the other guys in there. And those are all Iraqis. And except for the one guy to my right is one of my Lance Corporals. But
looking at all the rounds right on the step.
Yeah, that's just, we'd already pushed them all out. That was just some that were left. We didn't tidy up with a broom or anything. We just got the bulk of them out of the way. And what we were doing is we were looking over there, and we had a British spot map, which is a great thing. Mm-hmm. And we were updating all the enemy positions, because this is when I was starting the ring of fire around us, where I was hitting every single known position with a 500-pounder as fast as I could all around us. So it was like constant explosions all the way around. This is actually a picture from later in the north after we'll save that one for later. I'll get to that one in a minute, but that one's crazy. But where we pushed into the TV station, and that's where we had a pretty bad collateral damage incident there that I was responsible for. And but even knowing what would have happened, if you put me in the same position today, I would have do the same thing.
What happened?
Well, we were getting hit from all sides. We were getting sniped. We were getting machine gunned. We were getting mortared, and we were constantly. By that time, I had I think 5 JTAC or 5 fix with JTACs in each one of them with me. My higher headquarters from Al Assad was sending me reinforcements, sending me more teams because it was just heating up beyond. It was ridiculous, actually, and which I appreciated very much, and it was Mike Gann was his name, was the CO up there, and him and the sergeant major, and I think honestly, I had to thank General Kelly for helping me, and he was the one that really kept the light on us for logistical support and tactical reinforcement, because we were running out of everything all the time, especially ammo, and that's unfortunate when that starts happening. When you see
air resupplied, or did they have
no, we got
drop it off down somewhere and then drive it into you?
Yeah, they ended up caravanning armored 7 tons down to us, and then we had opened up like the boulevard so we could get back and forth to the Brits because we had to constantly medevac wounded, and they just did push logistics to us, and we were very grateful for that. When you see Marines picking up 8Ks and taking magazines off the dead, okay, something's not functioning. An AK, I mean, they're great close in, honestly, but if your target's even 200 yards away, good luck. Those things are junk at range.
And they were Iraqi made. They were Iraqi. Well, the ones we had up there in
DK. We had Russian, Chinese, Yugoslavian, and then unknown manufactured AKs all around us. A lot of them are brand new, and so you'd think a brand new one would be a reasonably tight barrel. It's like, no, it's great 50 yards, maybe 100 yards. But
what were they using for the sniper? Were they using the Dragunov, or
they were using Dragunovs? And then once in a while, we caught a mercenary sniper with like a long Mauser with a Zeiss scope and a silencer made in France. And he still had his passport in his pocket. It's like,
really, where was the guy from?
Typically Chechen. But this, I'm looking at a $10,000 rifle. And it's like, no, I think we'll keep that. And we everything we had all these weapons caches we uncovered throughout our entire experience there. We were constant, literally. Tons.
Did you get to use that rifle, or one of your guys get to use that rifle back?
I can neither confirm nor deny whether or not we ever actually test fired a sniper rifle
in combat
or two. Just I can't really get too much into that, but we weren't allowed to take them home.
Right,
it'd be a hell of a deer rifle, I tell you.
Yeah,
but anyways, so we. Had to hit this house. I had it. We were getting hit with mortars. We were getting sniped. We were getting machine gun bursts. But they had a way of scarfing their muzzle flashes. It turned out they had these large kind of homemade flash suppressors, I guess you'd call them, kind of like a long, thin soup can, and they just with holes in the end of it, and we just weren't picking up the muzzle flash, and then some of them were like legitimate. Silencers that there's no flash off those either. So at night, when these guys are camoed up and laying down all over the rubble, you're not going to see them. But you have a predator with heat on it, you can see them.
Right.
So then you triangulate where the stuff's coming from. And so we had, one JTAC, 100 yards to my left, and then me, and then another JTAC next to me to verify that I'm not seeing things here. And I'm like, okay, the fire is coming from down this azimuth, and then we'd have that guy, give us his azimuth, literally on a wet compass. And I plotted them on the, I mean, this is rudimentary, you know.
Right.
I plot them, and then I'm like, they're intersecting at this house. They're not intersecting like out in the field. It's at a building.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking at that building, and then we did pick up a slight flash. And then the predator's showing heat signatures of multiple bodies laying in different areas of cover and concealment on this building. I go, that's our building.
Mm.
So, of course, to triple check myself, a sniper was taking another shot at me for some reason. And then he took a cigarette break in the back. And so he walked around to where there's a little ambient light coming out of the back of the house, lights up a cigarette, and is sitting there with this long rifle across his lap. Clear as day. And, you know, the optics on the predator are pretty impressive. And so we zoomed in. I'm like, so I just grabbed the closest Marine to me, a Lance Corporal. I go, what's that? I pointed at the screen, and he goes, holy crap, that's a Dragunov. And I'm like, thank you, go. You know, and then I grabbed it was an F-16, Viper was in the area. So I used him and gave him the 9-line. And right after I cleared him hot, and fish is going to be in the air in a few seconds here, I get a call from the Brits on the safety of flight freak. And they're going, counter battery radar has picked up the mortars coming off that, you know, your poo site. And the grid for the origin of those mortars is the grid you just read, that pilot. So that was my fourth check. And I'm like,
so not only are you getting the snipers, you're getting the mortar team too.
Yep. So I'm like, fine. So we had, you know, there's cockpit selectable things, which I can't get into, but it was like, give me max delay on that bomb. And I already told them what I wanted. I go, because I want this thing to go off on the bottom floor. Right. Hopefully bring the building down. But these are heavy concrete buildings, you know, like, so when they would send me AC-130s, I would trade them with the SOCOM teams in the area to get a Predator. A Predator I can use. The AC-130, it's like hitting the thing with tennis balls. You know, it just, I needed a bigger boom. So I would always trade out. And so this bomb hits, and all I had time to do when I saw what happened was say, oh shit. You know, that was it. That's all the time I had, because you see this light speed blast wave coming across the field at you, and it's just momentary. You just catch it. It hit me, and I'm tumbled across the ground.
Yeah.
And I could not get up. I could barely get on my hands and knees. I remember throwing up immediately, and my head felt like I was like just getting spun around by a giant. And then I tried to get up, and I kept falling to my right, you know, and I'm like, holy crap. And I look, and everyone around me they're floundering around like a bunch of fish out of water, you know. And then I look over, and there is literally a orange mushroom cloud going up into space. And the building, when I look at it through my little, you know, cool guy binos, I look at it and I'm like, it's gone. The whole building is gone.
What did they drop on it?
Well, that was my question. So I'm yelling it. I still have the radio handset in my hand, you know. So I'm yelling into it at this pilot. What the hell did you drop? It was like a Moab or something, you know. And he's not answering me. And then I look, and at my little handset, and the wires are, you know, they're all broken. And I'm like, oh, so I got over there and switch handsets real quick. And, you know, and of course I'm standing up, falling, you know, trying to get back to my Humvee, and get a new handset in there with the help of one of my Lance Corporals. And finally got a hold of the guy, and he thinks we're all dead, you know. And I'm going, what was that? And he's like, I'm only carrying 500 pounders, you know. And he goes, and we've been hitting things with 500 pounders at about that range all week.
How far out do you think it was?
About 350 meters at most. So we knew we were already close.
You're close, yeah.
But that's our life. I mean, I don't think we had more than half a dozen drops that were not danger close. So I'd say there's danger close, and then there's really, really danger close, you know, which means I'm 200 meters away, and I got my hands on my ears, and I'm in a ditch. For God's sakes, drop. we're going to get overrun, which was, this scenario and many other situations we had. So if I get banged up, I get banged up, man, but we're dead otherwise, And so when that thing went off, I mean, yeah, we figured out later that night, because
ammo depot.
Well, the Brits were the first to respond back from the AWACS inquiry that I passed up through them. What happened? What did we hit? Because the AWAC filmed it through the Predator. I mean, they record everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm recording it, but I don't know if my computer's actually completely intact at this point. And so the AWAC says, we're putting it out. We're trying to find out, And the Brits came back pretty quick, saying their first estimate, their ballpark rule of thumb, was you hit about between 4,000 and 5,000 pounds of plastic.
Oh,
and that would be what they call
God.
That would be what they call simply a pallet. They had a full pallet of plastic bricks, probably worse than C4, probably Semtex or something even more advanced. And so the house is gone. There is a crater there because, that was, so many tons of TNT equivalent, enough to, blow that house into low orbit. Well, that's what the problem was, is that they had, and we had seen it, but there was nothing we could do. I'm not going to let my guys just die because someone's using a human shield.
Right.
It's like I had made that. You have to make that decision very early in your life, when you're over there, to what are my limits? What are my left and right lateral limits? At what point is the ethical dilemma I'm going to be presented with owned by me, or is it owned by somebody else?
Sure.
And my, moral injury, if you want to call it that, from that event, I put on the militia and the tribal leader. They created this scenario. The militia by doing it, the tribal leader by not stopping it.
Yeah.
So they know what I'm going to do. I already had a terrible reputation of killing everything in front of me. And since we had no OPSEC, I was using that to my advantage to actually have a two-way conversation with the militia through multiple stops, kind of like the game of telephone, but we actually were communicating with them and actually coordinated at one point to move a fight away from a school. So, General Petraeus was very interested in how that was happening. But anyways, so we had to help because the cries went out that entire 3-story concrete monstrosity of a mansion that had blown up, what goes up will come down. And they landed giant pieces of concrete all over that neighborhood, crushing entire families, bringing houses down. I mean, the whole neighborhood took the hit. And so the Iraqi general quickly came up to me and he says, we have committed an unspeakable act. We now, by Muslim faith law, we must assist the innocents that are injured and dead, and that you're not allowed to slaughter innocent people. And I had told him, well, I got that, but the militia's there. What are we doing? And he's like, they will not be firing at us. They have the same rules. And so I'm like, okay, guys, this is about to get really weird. And we actually left our positions, went to the site where the hit was, which is right over there, and, one of the weirdest scenarios I've ever seen in my life is a gurney, a little stretcher being carried by a young man in his 20s in civilian clothes with an AK over his back, and a Marine on the other end with an M4 carrying a wounded girl out of the rubble that they both had dug out themselves together. One is clearly militia.
Mm-hmm.
And all the shooting stopped. And the militia was walking in among us, rubbing shoulders with the Marines and the Iraqi soldiers and everything. And they had to help. And so it was, I hadn't seen that side of the Muslim faith yet. Wow. And and I won't even tell you what the casualty count is, because it's like, talk about things that wake me deep in the night, I'll never forget that. But entire families wiped out. I mean, it was just horrible. And we were missing a car. there was a white car that went in front of it that we didn't find for 2 days. It apparently had been blown up in the air and had crashed through the roof and was in somebody's house in the middle of their living room, burning. Wow. And it wasn't a couple of days till we even found it. But anyway, so we were ground medevacing them to the one semi-operating hospital in Basra that was still open. Mm-hmm. And we were medevacing them and everything. We're putting them in bongo trucks and little Toyota pieces of junk and all this other stuff. Just get them out of there, get them to the hospital because, they're missing a leg. I got a tourniquet on it. We'd write the time. I mean, hope they know how to read, at least take the thing off when they get there, And, and we're just looking at what it was, just a mess. And then I remember one of the Iraqi colonels, Colonel Imud, came up to me and he's like, it will be very important that we leave as soon as we tell you it is time. And so at a certain point in the recovery and the undigging and, digging through the rubble and everything, he looks at me and he says, Major, it's time to go. And so I'm like, Marines, back in our cage. And so we all very quickly left, and we noticed the militia was all quickly leaving. Apparently we had hit some line in the sand where we had done our religious obligation there. And we got back to our vehicles and our positions. And I'm like, wow, that was some weird stuff. And then boom, first bullet goes over our head, and it's like.
And they probably had a bounty on you too.
They did. They pulled the bounty on me when I was still at the gates. And and they also personally threatened me by kidnapping an Iraqi army major from some other unit that I had never dealt with, and made him get in his full ceremonial, like our equivalent of dress blues with all his medals and badges, and then torn him to pieces, tortured him to death. And it was pretty gruesome to see the body. But they had a car come by near our position and threw this body out and then kept going. And so the Iraqi soldiers went over there and got the body and brought it back. And that's when the same colonel, Imud, came and grabbed me and he goes, there's something you need to see. And I walked over there with him. And here's this poor son of a bitch just torn to pieces there. And I'm looking at him going, that man suffered pretty heavily. And through his sternum, like with a spike hammered through his sternum, like you're hammering something into a board, was a note written in Arabic for me. And it basically said, this is what is going to happen to you if you do not leave my country immediately. And some other very colorful insults. I don't know what son of 16 dogs means, but apparently that's what I was. And I don't know why 16, not 17. I don't know. But so he asked me, he goes, so what are you going to do? I go, what would you do if you were an Iraqi officer and this message came to you? And he goes, oh no, when this happens, which apparently it frequently does, he would take and be relieved and he would go get his family and they'd move to Jordan or something. They would leave and that the military would allow them to. And I'm like, well, I'm not Iraqi. I go, let me tell you what this does to an American and a Marine. And I knew that a bunch of the mid-level enlisted Iraqis were around me, the ones that kept talking on their arachnophones, which is why the militia always knew everything, including that there was a Marine major in there controlling the airstrikes. And I said to an American, to me, this makes me so furious. It makes me want to never leave Iraq, to die of old age here. And I will spend every day of my life killing the militia and their families until they never existed. And I'm not going to leave until I kill a whole bunch more of you. And if you ever do this again, I'm coming after your wives and children. And the Iraqi colonel kind of looked at me and he kind of pulls me aside and walks away and he goes, you know, they're telling their, you know, they're calling and, they listen. And I'm like, exactly. Just let's see what happens. I go, I'll bet they never do this again. And they never did. The whole rest of the time we were there.
Wow.
But the weird deal was when he came to me the next day and said that this general, the Quds Force commander, General Suleiman, had put a bounty on me that apparently was several years' salary to these guys or something like that, which I'm like, that's it? You know, and I thought it was like this has got to be a joke. You don't put bounties on people, you know? And so I said, well, whatever bounty he put on me, I triple it in cash if someone brings me his head on a plate. And some of the younger Iraqis heard that as well. And they walk away kind of like, oh my God, you know? And so I was laughing about it going, yeah.
But you've got Iraqis that, you know, are all just one Allah away from turning their gun on you.
Well, yeah. And this would make them do it. And this would make them do it, you know? And so, anyways, but then the general came and talked to me and he goes, you know, one of the Iraqi soldiers is going to kill you. And one of his buddies is going to film it on video on his Iraqi phone, because that's all the evidence they need to make the payoff happen. You know, and he goes, you are in big danger right now. And I'm like, okay, we call that great danger. Big danger. It's not proper use of English to say that. But anyway, so.
But no, did he say, you're in grave danger? You're in big danger.
You're in big danger. Well, he used big a lot. Like if someone was a seriously bad liar or even a liar at all, or you say, they big liar. You know, I'm like, okay, big means, okay, I get it. But, you know, so I just kind of forgot about it, you know, and I'm like, bounty, you know, really? So I ended up pulling my name tag off, you know.
Yeah, but you're you, man. You're the old guy walking around with the Marines and
digis. You can't mistake me, you know, but I'm not going to make it easy for you, you know.
Yeah.
And so I pulled my name tag off and just put an ISAF tag on me, you know. And I'm like, fine.
I got a picture of that.
Nope.
Right there.
Probably, yeah. You can see it there. The gunny still got his tag on, but I got that one because mine had a set of wings on it, you know.
Right.
And so they couldn't mistake me for one of the other Marines. And from one of the snipers that we actually had captured, yeah, oddly enough, we actually captured a couple people and interviewed them. Yeah. They were apparently scoping us, and that they were told, you must kill the major. He is the key. And they were scoping us, looking on our chests. Look, I mean, that's how much they were eyeing us.
Did you have rank on there? No, you didn't have rank on there, did you?
There was rank on there was like a center tab I had around.
Oh, I see. You've got the my neck major right under that neck gaiter. Yeah.
The neck gaiter is torn. My little Velcro thing gave up the ghost pretty quick. So it was kind of flopping down all the time. But I had my rank on me.
Yeah.
And I kind of
did that subdued black.
You know, at a certain point, you know, you have kind of a different attitude about all that stuff. I'm kind of like, I dare you to shoot at me, you know, because if you do, if it's worth a bullet back, it's worth a 500-pound bomb to me. and you know that. So you shoot at me, you're going to collect the bomb. You know, good luck. And so, anyways, but we ended up pushing through different neighborhoods. And the worst one was what we just called Hyanea. I couldn't really pronounce what it was, but that's the closest we could get. And that neighborhood, we found out Saddam never controlled. He lost 2 tanks and a Hind helicopter trying to get in that neighborhood within the first like 5 minutes. And so he immediately withdrew, and they just cordoned it off and controlled who came and went. But it's in the southwest corner of Basra, and it's very high density population. And the main tribal leader there controls over half those people. So he is estimated to control, they were estimating between 40 and 50,000 people. So
once again, you're going in there with 500.
Well, this time we had 1,452 Iraqis up until Tuesday when one of the captains got his head blown off. So we had 1,451. And then at that time I was plussed up to like 54 Marines. And going in against, you know, and I said, well, how many people has he ever put on the street at one time? What's the most? And we asked the Brits about that and asked Al-Assad about that. And apparently he has the ability to put about 30,000 soldiers on the street in about 20 to 30 minutes.
Wow.
That's a significant force, just saying. And that they had a lot of heavy weapons as well. They had RPGs, they had mines, they had, you know, heavy dishkas, and rumored to have a 37 millimeter MRAP killer cannon. And I'm like, well.
And pallets of Syntex sitting around.
Yeah. So we're like going, this might not go that well. And so we planned the whole thing out, and the Minister of Defense came down from Baghdad, and honestly, not a smart man. But so we had to allow him to pound the podium and give us his plan. Then when it was all done, I walked over to the general, like, okay, that's not what we're doing. And we're going to figure this out and try and do the most hurt on them in the least amount of time. And, we're going to be smart here. And no matter how we figured it, we were going to die the next morning when we went into this neighborhood. There was no way we were going to prevail. They had weapons that could punch right through our MRAPs. They had the large, found out a lot about RPGs, 2 different sizes. The big ones will kill an up armored Hummer. Mm-hmm. Might not kill an MRAP if there's an angle off, but they'll kill a Striker. They'll kill any thin armored vehicle, while the smaller ones may or may not. And they had a lot of the big ones. And it's like, oh, this sucks. So when we did the whole plan, we realized we're grotesquely outnumbered here, and we're in a very, very tight area. So it's not like there's anywhere to spread out. And we are going in. And so we had the discussion, and that's when I kind of had a philosophical change in my mind about where, you're parental as you can be, but at a certain point, the end of the day is coming. And so I sat down with all the Marines, and I told them that you need to simply accept your own death and embrace it and control it. And we will do the best we can, and we will make them forever remember the day they took on a handful of Marines, because we're going to bleed them, but we're all going to die. So we're going to do our best. And you just need to simply be realistic here. Expectation management is huge. And so we had the discussion. I said, I have one of these Iridium phones. Each one of you is calling home. If there's someone you need to tell them you forgive them, or ask for forgiveness, or tell them you love them, or someone you haven't talked to that you need to, you're not going to give away anything that's going on here, but you're having at least 10 minutes, every one of you.
Wow.
And we're going to just go around the circle. And that's the end of it. It's not a discussion item. And tomorrow, when we're doing our best, and I will have the honor of standing next to you when this happens, you're doing everything you can, and suddenly you're sitting down next to a dead relative you miss very much, and he puts his arm around you and walks off with you. You know what happened. At least you have the benefit of knowing when, where, and why. And we're going to die clean. And
That's
so,
beautiful. Wow.
So we did that. We did that. And the next morning at 4:30 a.m., we had lined up by this time, we had almost 400 vehicles, most of them armored, most of them with heavy guns and the turrets. And we are lined up in rows, and we are going to come in. We're going to come in. And we could see the streets were jammed with bad guys, all armed. And I'm like, yep, there's our 30,000. And so this is the way it's going to go down. Well, in the meantime, the Minister of Defense had assumed and insisted that the Iraqi Air Force assist. And I'm like looking at the going, there's an Iraqi Air Force? Where? What? Well, a little while later, we hear this Russian helicopter coming, and it's leaving a smoke trail. It's not really going straight. It's kind of in a Dutch roll thing. And I'm like, he's got a stab-og that doesn't work. And, anyways, this piece of junk comes over there and lands, and the slide door opens. And the Brits, of course, wanted to be involved in one way or another. And they had printed out all these flyers, in Arabic that basically said, we're coming in just after the militia, not after you. We're your countrymen, all the good things that you're supposed to say. But they'd printed out like 10 reams of these things, like this stack of, things that had just come off the printer. And the Iraqi guy grabs them, and he walks over and he puts them inside the helicopter, and he's going to distribute the flyers. And I'm just like, how much time does he think we're going to wait? Really? Where were you like an hour ago? But anyway, so it got worse. The guy takes off, and he starts to go into the the neighborhood, and the kid in the doorway just kicks the whole stack out at one time. And it sounded like a frozen turkey coming down, just like shedding feathers the whole way.
WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
That's what it reminded me
No,
of.
turkeys
And
can't
it
fly.
slams into the top of this Toyota and blows all the windows out,
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and the Iraqi general goes, well, that is done. Will you go? And and off we went, and I'm just like, what was that, But I'd also had a show of force planned with a B-1, and he came low and fast over us. Got permission. This is all pre-cleared. Quite low, like I probably could have hit him with a potato gun. And he comes by and then does the full burner straight up spinning as he leaves their area.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the fillings were going to fall out of my teeth. I mean, that is an impressive machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then turned around and by prior arrangement, dropped 4 2,000-pound bombs in this like salt flat right on the edge of the neighborhood across the boulevard. It's just this salty flat of mud. Dropped 4 2,000-pounders, instantaneous fuses, to blow out at least 5,000 windows and really rock their world and let them know what's coming, and then have this thing orbit overhead so they can see their own end about to happen. And they know, the Marine major that controls the airstrikes is still alive, and he's going to be controlling that thing, and that I am going to. And I put the word out that I will burn this entire city down if that's what I have to do. I don't care. I hate Iraq. And so that, was put out through this little informal, method of communications that the militia knew this. Well, then when that was all done and all this mud and smelly crap is done landing on top of all of our Humvees and everything, we're just like, wow, that was really loud. We then look, and these streets that were jammed with bad guys, they're empty. We're like, where the hell did everybody go? And we're like, well, let's roll. And so we all rolled in, and that's a lot of armor. We had literally 400 vehicles with us. And so we are all rolling in, and then an old man walked in front of our lead vehicle and stopped. And so he had a message for us, and his message was, the tribal leader will not cooperate with us, but he will not oppose us. But he holds us personally responsible for any of his tribal members that are injured or killed, and he will not tolerate it. Only militia. And that they are doing their best right now to kill the militia themselves. And that if you see bodies getting thrown out of windows, that's what's happening.
So this was the awakening that we always... The Arab Spring, the awakening.
Yeah, but the awakening that I heard of was the Sunni awakening in Anbar.
Right.
We're in the Shia world here. This is in the South. These are not awakened people.
Right.
But what it was is they were afraid of Iran. We were getting rid of the Iranian influence. And we also had a deal that we were now well known for, that when we would come in, I would sit down with the Iraqi general and the elders of a neighborhood, and we would put little mayors, a bunch of little mayors all through the city.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of them, when I designate them and the Iraqi general, because you had to put an Iraqi face on everything, when they get designated as the mayor, it's typically the tribal leader we're meeting with, who is the most powerful tribal leader. Not necessarily a good guy. I don't care. He's the guy in charge, de facto in charge. So he's already running things. So we will make him the mayor officially. And we had our CMOC guy, which is a Navy captain carrying briefcases literally full of cash, would come in and he'd open up all these municipal contracts because the mayor was responsible for what we called SWET, or sewer, water, education, administrative, and trash. Mm-hmm. He had to set all this up. He had to open the schools. He had to get all the municipality functions, the infrastructure working again. And he was going to be paid on a budget to do this. And he was allowed to take what was nicknamed Guido's cut, which is the top 10%, mm-hmm. not 11%, 10%. He gets to keep. It's a lot of money depending on how big the neighborhood is, especially by Iraqi standards.
Right.
So if he agrees to this deal with us, he will be, and his family and his tribe will be rich and in control forever. So it's a pretty good deal.
You think those guys are still in control?
They are. Even during the ISIS meltdown, south of Baghdad, that we had every one of those townships was on this plan that we had touched. They stayed stable. They're still stable today.
Are you talking to the that general you worked with? Are you still talking to him?
Yeah, I promised him I would not use his name.
Sure. But I mean, are you still in communication? Yeah. Is he doing all right?
He's still doing all right. He's back in London, doing all right. Yep. And all three colonels that I dealt with over there as well. One of them had a heart attack, but the other two are still alive and back in London in business. Like I said, they're all wealthy. And so when this guy takes the deal, there's a couple caveats, a couple rules. Number one, don't take 11%, 10%. And you must fulfill your obligations here. And if you let the militia or the Iranians back in, or you let corruption occur, you'll know we found out about it, because your house will blow up with you and your family in it. Because I will come back. Because I will come back. And we will then take this offer and we'll give it to your arch rival tribe. And they will be rich and in control forever. And your tribe will suck it. And so it's like the carrot and the stick. Which one do you want? I mean, if you want all stick, I can do that.
Yeah.
But I would suggest you take our offer. And we also, at these meetings, I had the Marines behind me, each of them with a saw on one side and the other. And, just like General Mattis instructed us, be friendly, be cordial, be professional, but have a plan to kill everyone
you meet. Yeah.
And we had a plan that we had briefed about which side of the room each one of them was going to wipe out if I gave them the signal that we were in trouble.
Yeah.
And so I won't tell you what that signal is, because I may need to use it again. But no, basically, if they saw me pull my 9mm out, open fire. And this guy kill everybody on the right side, that guy kill everybody on the left side, and that's the way it was going to roll. And luckily we didn't have to do that. But, once in a while, these, the Arabs don't, their culture is they don't make an agreement on the first meeting. It's always the second or third meeting. And I told them, I go, this is not an Arab meeting. This is an American meeting. You'll make a decision tonight, or you're not leaving. And you will tell me whether or not you're taking this deal, or whether or not I'm sending you to Abu Ghraib, burning your half of the city down and giving this offer to the other tribe. So what's your decision? And they'd yell at me in Arabic and wave their hands around. And the guy would lean, my Terp would lean on my ear and he goes, "You are son of 16 dogs again." And I, and I'm just like, whatever, man, I don't care, And, amazingly enough, they took the deal like pretty much every time. But
Sluggo, have you written a book? Have you put this down on paper?
Well, I have. Thank you for asking. The book is in the works. It's with an editor right now, a wonderful person. And she will be doing her thing with it. And I'm sure it'll go back and forth and until we fine tune it. And the latest working title that we had for it was, it started out a little too long, I think. It was, retreads in the Garden of Eden. If you know what a retread is, you'll understand why I named it that. But the title looks like it has evolved into just a simpler one, just blood and sand.
Nice.
And just, that's going to be it. It should be out, when the time is right, I guess. I haven't done this before, but it is complete already.
It's got to be this thick.
I self-edited out a lot of it. I wanted it, like 90,000 words or less. It's a little over that, but
Amazing.
It was a crazy experience. But when we finished that neighborhood, a Hyannia neighborhood walkthrough, that's a weird feeling. You were expecting to not see this time on your watch because you were going to be dead already. All of the Marines knew they were going to be dead, and none of them slowed down. All of them were right there. The whole, I mean, I couldn't be prouder of anybody in my life. They faced it straight on. And, you know, and the only comment that I had heard from them when I told them we're going, there's no plan B here. You know, one of them, one of the Lance Corporals that was remarkably well read, he looked at me and he goes, and into the valley rode the 600. And I just said, yep, exactly. We will meet them just the same. And, you know, so we had met them. We had ridden into the valley of death and come out the other side, and everything was, you know, mostly intact, because we did find a sniper and his brother that had done home invasion and had been the sniper that we could never find that was killing us back at the TV station, because that position was actually at the bottom end of this neighborhood. And
so you got this guy?
We got him.
Oh, good.
The family, when we're going house to house, the family had passed a note to the Iraqi soldier that went in the house saying, the militia is here. And so they instantly got about 20 guys piled into the house, and they went through the whole thing and found the guy hiding, because the kids hated this guy. He had, when he had invaded the house, the first thing he did is shoot their father in the head. Then he heard two of his daughters listening to what they just call Western music and executed both the girls, and then had the family as his slaves imprisoned there, and while he was shooting us from the roof, and they had them, he was hiding under their laundry all the time. That's why we could never find him. So we dragged this bastard outside, and the Iraqi soldiers they'd had a hard time with his brother. His brother had tried to escape, I guess, and been shot 17 times in the back. So he was down. And so we're dealing with the brother. And I think I sent you a picture of the brother sitting there with a blindfold on. But anyways, we had, you know, not known this had occurred. And then the Iraqis came and told us, we found your sniper, you know. And I'm like, what? And they said, that guy right over there is the guy that was shooting at us from the north. And so, you know, you're a different person over there, and you have to constantly check yourself to make sure you don't get outside your left and right lateral limits of behavior. And I remember looking at my M4, pulling the bolt back to make sure I had brass in there, slamming it forward and clicking the safety off as I walked up to the guy. You know, guess what was about to happen, you know? And the gunny, my great guy, kind of grabs my rifle and he goes, oh no. No. You know, and I'm like, I'm not going to do anything. You know, and he goes, put safety on, sir. I go, oh, is the safety on? I didn't see that, you know.
Accidental discharge. Come on.
And I'm just like, what is wrong with me? You know, I'm like, it's you have this level of rage in you, because at this point, 4 of my Marines have been wounded already. And one of them, quarter of an inch different hit and he would have been dead, you know. And I mean, you just, and then all these Iraqis that you develop, I mean, you develop like male bonding relationships with these guys. They're speaking English to you, you know. And after the bounty, we had bodyguards literally that the general insisted were the Iraqi soldiers that were English speakers, you know, senior enlisted guys that were living with us and with us all the time. And they were there to stop an Iraqi soldier from approaching us, you know, with bad intent. Right. And, you know, those guys were getting killed, you know, like more than one, usually because they would always be on the hot side of us. If I walk between 2 buildings and there's fire coming from my right, this guy will hustle around and walk on the right side of me like a bullet shield everywhere. And I couldn't stop him. You know, this is like, no, this is my job, Sadie, you know? And so, you know, at a certain point and those guys were getting hit regularly. And so you're friends with them, and this guy took your bullet. And so you get mad beyond anything I had ever experienced in my life. Yeah. You know, I mean, everybody gets mad once in a while, but holy moly, this is like a whole nother level. True rage is just below the surface. So I'm kind of empathetic when I hear about somebody that steps outside the boundaries and does something they shouldn't have. I'm like, well, he shouldn't have done that. But I can see how you got to that state of mind. Yeah. It's just unfortunate you let it get the better of you. So, you know, and then I'm like, Gunny, I know, I'm sorry. I wasn't going to do anything, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, that's that sniper that was shooting us from the north. And he goes, what? And he pulls his 9mm, checks to see if there's brass in it. And I'm like, oh, no, no. I'm like, no. You need to calm down, And he's like, I'm like, no. And so everybody's like checking each other all the time. You're a team out there, so be a good team member. And turns out the Iraqis handled them very professionally. And we had some Army Intel Battalion women with us because Anglico didn't have any girls in it, like not one. And so we certainly don't have Intel people. So we had these two Army Intel girls, and they would talk to the women, and they'd pull them aside when we were going through households. And we'd hear occasionally that one of the women would completely betray her husband because she hated him because he beats her and is cruel to her. And she'll tell him, once she verifies 2 or 3 times that what she says isn't going to get back to him, she'd say, my husband's in the militia. He's actually one of the lieutenants, and give us his phone, who he associates with, where they meet, the whole structure of the militia that they know of. And it's amazing how much they knew.
Right.
And where they buried everything, and the addresses of where weapons were buried and everything. And we'd get this incredible intel dump from the women. And then we'd go over there and say, okay, everything's fine. Your house is fine. We walk away, and then we'd pursue this and act upon it. And lo and behold, we'd have to go back to the house and arrest him. And he would believe it was somebody else that gave him up,
Right.
And so we were pretty good at playing that game.
That's amazing.
Like I said, our intel was shockingly good. We were at a certain point updating CENTCOM's intel picture because their intel was dangerously obsolete compared to ours.
That's amazing.
Terribly obsolete. And but after, to regress a little bit, after that terrible night where we blew that house to smithereens and caused all that collateral, the next morning I got a little email, which I didn't know you could send emails on the Blue Force trackers, but you can, because I got one, and that's how we knew. And I told one of the computer geek Lance Corporals, I go, figure out how to send one. It took them quite a while actually to figure it out. But anyways, we get this email, and it says that me and my radio chief are to meet General Petraeus at the British Chow Hall at 09 the next morning. And I'm like, oh. So I told the Marines, I'm about to be detained and probably court-martialed. But you know what? That's fine. Last night was on me. I'm the one that cleared that thing. Don't you worry about it. It's my problem. They're not going to go after the gunny, but he's going with me. They're going to go after me. And I told him, I go, so it's been great. It's been my honor. You're going to get a replacement. You will, I insist, you treat him the same way you treated me, because you're the best, and we're succeeding in spite of all the numbers, like amazingly succeeding. You need to continue to lean forward. We have the initiative. Don't lose it. Don't let the militia get the initiative back. We are determining the pace of the fight right now. The militia is on the run. So the next morning we go over there, and it's just like we thought. They make us get out of our Humvee, get in a British vehicle, go to the Chow Hall, and then we take off all our gears. We're standing there just in our camis, and then we get felt down, like we're going through a TSA, super check or something. And they took my little pocket knife away and everything. And I'm just like, are you guys kidding me right now? I go, usually we pay money for this, but anyway, so we're completely.
You're going to.
I'm going to jail.
Yeah, you're going to Brig.
And but the gunny is a cop. He's a reservist. He's normally a cop. So he and I are talking about how they're going to do the good cop, bad cop, or what the strategy. So we got this down. So I'm like, okay. I go, gunny, just stay clear. Let them take me. You don't do anything. So we walk in, and I'm ready. I'm totally ready at this point. And there's General Petraeus standing right there, and there's 3 other generals. One, the British general that runs the base, and then a couple of colonels that I guessed, and correctly so, were intel. And so I'm standing there, and you come to attention and say, reporting as ordered, sir. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, at ease, for Christ's sake, and shakes my hand and takes my hand in both his hands, and he goes, how are you doing? Last night was pretty rough. Are you guys okay? How are your Marines doing? And I'm like, what? And he goes, we're going to have something to eat, and we're going to talk about what the hell is going on down here? And of course, I'm just like,
I'm not getting arrested.
well, Gunny, being the world's biggest smartass, sits there and goes, so we're not being detained? I'm like, Gunny, this is when you shut up, But so we did. We sat down, and very professional meeting, and they were very, very interested in the intel dump we were offering about how this is working and how I am actually doing two-way communication with the enemy here. And we are actually controlling each other's behavior to a point. We're like having a strange discussion. And
did you tell him about pulling the bodies out and the ceasefire and all that?
We did. Well, I had to ask. I'm like, we've run out of ammo occasionally. We've had all these problems. And he goes, I know, we've been watching everything.
I was going to say they were overhead
through the AWAC,
right?
He goes, CENTCOM's got live AWAC feed 24/7. We see everything you've done, and we see everything you see. And I'm just like, so you watched us? You watched our wounded die. You watched us be surrounded and run out of everything. You watched all that, And so the Marine general that had shown up, great guy named General Flynn, different Flynn, George Flynn, sits there and he goes, Major, he's a 4-star. Check yourself. Because he could see I was, like I said, you're kind of edgy,
Right.
And I was just like, really? And then we had a very cordial conversation. I explained how it was all working and what was working, what wasn't working. Our thing with the Jundy going out and giving us real intel, live updates by the minute, and all this stuff. Yeah, all this stuff, and how we were negotiating, what my negotiation philosophy, I guess they call it, was when we sit down with the tribal leaders and figure out what's going to happen next, and all this stuff. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, so in one sentence, what would you say your plan here is? I go, lead with fires. That was it. And he's
like, my mission, sir, is to destroy the enemy and restore cave dwelling. And cave dwelling is a permanent way of residence in the former terrorist region.
But the amazing, beautiful thing of it is that when we would come into a neighborhood, it would be horrible looking, dirty, disgusting, burned out place with no one on the streets, and it just looked like a movie set of a zombie apocalypse or something. And when we would rid the militia, and they realized the militia is actually dead, and that the Marines aren't going to kill them, because they were convinced we were going to kill them, that the Marines aren't going to kill them. The first man would come over, and he would be the tribal leader, and I'd shake his hand, and he wants to give me a big hug, and I'd give him a hug. So I'm like, if he's going to blow me up, do it. Just get it over with, And so they see that I wasn't afraid of them, and that we would give each other a big hug out there, and then we'd walk around and he'd introduce me who his big families that were favorites of his were, who owned this store. And when they see that happening, everybody comes out. And within half a day, these barren fields that we'd never seen any activity in were actually soccer fields. And the kids are all out there playing soccer. And the markets turn back on. The women are out there selling whatever they have to sell on the street. Everything came back to life. And so as we would leave a neighborhood and go on to the next one, we're looking behind us going, holy crap, look at what has happened, And so, that whole thing Reagan said about, have you made a difference in this world? Mm-hmm. We didn't have to question that, it was amazing. And we had also a couple of different plans. We also brought local police in that were not from that local area.
Right.
So they didn't have the family alliances. And then we brought federal police in that were given a cash bonus program to catch the local police taking bribes and being corrupt and doing bad things.
Right.
And so they're always watching each other, and the local police can rat on the federal police. And there's all this money involved, so they watch each other. And then, of course, the mayor will shoot you in the head if you don't do what he says, because he doesn't want his house to get blown up, And so that is the stabilization effort. is that no matter where you go in the world, everybody understands a dollar and the barrel of a gun, no matter what. And if you keep that as your tools, then the world's a very simple place.
Let me ask you this: the militia, were they all locals, or were they inbound Syrian, Iranian?
Well, that was kind of a tragedy of the whole thing. Hang on, my computer's giving me pop-ups here. That was the real tragedy of it, is that the militia leaders were serious bad guys, Iraqi mostly. A couple transnational types, like a couple Syrians, a couple Jordanians, but they tended to be just nuts. And then the Iranian influence came in. All of their snipers were Quds Force snipers. Those guys had Western skills. Okay, you know, we would have a hard time making the shots they were making. Okay, these were not bad snipers. They were really talented snipers. And a lot of the leaders in combat, the guys actually leading the teams that were trying to breach our walls and everything, turns out were Iranian as well, Quds Force guys. A lot of the training was Quds Force. And, you know, and the Quds Force guys had actually gone along and they pre-planned, like that 120 millimeter mortar that was attacking us at the gates. That one, they had precast mortar bases in cement at different locations, and in Arabic had written the aiming instructions to hit different parts of the city from them. And so you didn't need the tube. All you would do is drive up with a tube, run out, drop it in there, follow the instructions, quickly drop 5 rounds down it, pick up the tube, put it in your trunk and drive away. And then, you know, they're gone before the first round is ever hit. And they were sighted in pretty tight. So they'd wait for a calm night or morning, usually about 3 or 5 in the morning where there's no wind. And boom, they'd hit so close, they'd be hitting our vehicles, hitting the buildings we're in with these things. And we didn't know where they came from. So one of the days that kept happening. And so I had the Predator up and we were just lucky that we saw this white tube. Okay, how stupid is it to paint a white, you know, white tube out there. And we zoomed in on it and we watched the guys. It was clearly a giant 120 millimeter Russian tube. And then they fire like three or more rounds out of it on video, then pick the thing up and run under an overpass. The overpass that was my escape route if I needed to go north to get out of here. So I can't drop that span because it goes over a river. Right. And so they're hiding under the overpass that I can't hurt next to a river. And I'm like, how are we going to do this? You know, and there's no way we can time it so that, because we can't get anything on it fast enough because they're just too good at it. And these rounds are like hitting our positions. So this is no joke. I mean, we already got a bunch of dead Iraqis from this thing and a wounded Marine. So I'm like, I am going to kill this thing. And so, you know, every once in a while, like at several times over there, I found in my life, if you just sit down, clear your mind and think, a solution will present itself. If you just are calm enough to listen. And that's just the way I solve things. So I sat down and it was literally like 30 seconds and I go, I got it. So I call the AWAC. I go, I need a couple jets. And he's like, well, what do you know? We got a jet about 2 minutes out, section F-18s. And so off the Truman, imagine that. So they come in and I tell them, I go 20 millimeter only, no bombs. And this is where being a TAC air pilot saved us. Because if I was an artillery guy that was a JTAC, this would not have occurred to me. But being that I was a Harrier guy, love lighting my hair on fire out there with that thing, I'm thinking, what is the maximum?
Skipping rounds?
No, worse. I tell them what I want. I go, I want you to do a split us at altitude, come basically 90 degrees down. And then watch your dive recovery rules, pull out over the river. I don't care if it goes supersonic or not. If you got a bunch of ordnance on, you're not going to go anyway, but fast as you can go, fast as you dare go without tearing yourself up. I suggest, the way I calculated it, you know, by meters per second, in my mind, back from old Harrier stuff, you know, I'm going, at least a 45-second chaff and flare program needs to auto run. All right, during this whole thing, I would say plan on no more than a 6G pull, and then get over that river, and then you're going to have about 4 to 5 seconds of trigger time to get that Gatling gun under that underpass and sweep from left to right. And tell me what you see, because I can't see under there. And then for God's sakes, pull up or you're going to hit the bridge. And I need that bridge. Don't hit it. It's my bridge, you know. And so I explained this whole plan to him. There's like 10 seconds of silence. And the guy sits there and he goes, shit hot, man. And
Air Force guy? Oh, no, it was the
Navy. There was a Navy F-18 guy. And Griff call sign. And he goes, let me brief my wingman. And wingman's like, no, I got it. I'm good. Let me go first. And the lead's like, oh, no. I'm going first. Yeah. And so, you know, I go, just tell me when you're ready and I will clear your hot when I see which way you pull. Because I don't want you going the wrong way down the river if you get disoriented in the dive or something. So you pull the right way, I'll clear your hot quick. Well, he pulled down. And I'm watching him coming. He's straight down. I'm looking where his canopy is. His canopy's facing the bridge. Cleared hot. He's going to pull the right way. So it's coming straight down. You can see his speed breaks out, you know, because he's like, holy crap, you know. And then he does this full, you know, vape all over the wing type hard pull. And then I do not know how high he was over the river because my line of sight was kind of marginal, but I could see part of the river, a little gap. When he went by, there was a rooster tail kicking up on the water when he went by. That's pretty low. It's awesome. And fully transonic coming through there. And then I hear the Gatling gun go off. And then we see a fireball blow out the backside of the underpass. He does this huge pull up. And I'm like, he's going to hit. Oh, my God. And he dusts off. These swirling dust clouds on the top of the overpass as he pulls up. I'm like, holy shit, that was close. You know? And then I look up, and here's his wingman coming down, clear him hot. And I go, tell him which way. And he goes, sweep right, don't sweep left, you know. And so the wingman hit, you know, apparently he had got from the base about halfway on the land and ran out of bullets or time, I think time. And his wingman kind of went from, and the guy's going, there's still a white vehicle to the right, you know, or something like that. So they're having their intersectional talk. He comes in and he hits it again, and another fireball out from under there. And they pull. So
he's lined up those rounds in the vehicle.
So he's what? Yeah, he's lighting off at least the fuel in the vehicle too. But the booms we were getting, there was secondaries going off because we heard several, you know, separate explosions after that, kind of like 4th of July.
Maybe it didn't blow up the bridge though.
It did not. It did not. It's an overpass. You know, it's wide open on each side, so it's not a contained explosion. You know, but what it did do. And, you know, this, I can say I'm not perfect. I did not foresee defilade. That was a problem. The bullets that went through that site and a bunch of the explosions that went through it actually blew out, went about a quarter mile, and just splattered a marketplace that was full of people. So we had to go over there and help. Luckily, no one was killed, but there was a lot of banged up people. And one guy that was super, super mad because his booth was on fire. And he would not shut up. I don't, you know, whatever. But anyways, we went over there. We went, son of 16. But we went over there and made amends and you know, gave, you know, it was just some corpsman level treatment. I was like so thankful that no one was killed. But basically, we then, of course, went over to the site, walked under the overpass, you know, had the Iraqi squad go through there with their, you know, big Magilla guerrilla guys to pick up whatever pieces we wanted. And for them, it's a very big deal to bury the dead. It's an Islam thing. Mm-hmm. They must be buried that day.
In 24 hours, yeah.
Yeah, so they would take the effort, you know. And I did question about that one time because I was like, the Americans, we'd step over them and keep going, you know. And they're like, no. They're saying the body is a gift from Allah. The soul was the enemy. It is gone. Do not insult God. That was his gift. Respect it. You know, cool. And I could totally get that. Totally get that. Yeah. So, you know, I didn't give him a hard time about it or anything. I was just like, you got 10 minutes, dig fast, you know, okay. we're not secure here, but we go under there, and it was a totally twisted tube, several holes in it, some from secondary shrapnel, and a couple burning vehicles and a bunch of bodies. And it's like, well, I think we got the mortar team,
Yeah,
but
it's a big one.
But that's the kind of stuff that we were having to do. You're literally making it up as we go along here, and just adapt, overcome, see what the situation is. If it's an artillery type situation, I grab an arty. If it's a pilot situation, what would I do? And then I'll grab Dan Jarl. He was an F-18 guy. We sit there, we talk about what can we do? What can we not do? What are our limitations here? And we pretty much thought our way through everything. Right. Including one time when we were in a really bad spot and a B-1 showed up with ground mapping radar, no pod. And I'm on a rover system. It's like, I can't see what you see. We're dropping on a small building in among a bunch of buildings. It's a complex target. And so I sat down, took my 30 seconds, and came up with what we just call a TTP now, of how I was going to verify what they were looking at versus what I was looking at, with third-party verification on both ends.
Did you hit it with the laser or anything like that?
I can't tell you what we did, because it's still a TTP today for when someone shows up with a dissimilar system that's not compatible with the optics we're using.
Nice.
It was just common sense. And I was kind of mad that I hadn't been trained on how to do this, that somebody hadn't thought of this before.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, man. You're supposed to think of this kind of stuff when you're in a little cubby, not when you're out here with 30 seconds to think about it, But we were solving problems that turned out, a lot of them were pretty good solutions.
Well, Sluggo, I am looking at the time. It is 2 hours and 12 minutes. We are a full motion picture length video, and I am still enthralled. And I know you've got like another 10 hours worth of talk. So I'd like to bring you back on if that's okay.
That'd be fine. We haven't even hit Mesopotamia yet.
Holy crap.
Okay. Remember, I went all the way up to there, then ended up going into the north in Diyala against AQI, which was a whole different scenario.
All right. I'm gonna have to bring you on for more. I got a couple things I just want to show you. Jason said, was that VMFA 312 Hornet that strafed those buildings for you? Do you remember?
What is their squadron call sign?
If he's still on, we might be able to hear, but I don't know.
I believe it was Griff, Griff.
Griff. Paula, thank you for your service, Tim. Really nice. Thanks, Paula, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Scary they knew how to operate the weapons that well, understand the physics. Yep. Yeah, it's true.
They were quite knowledgeable. Well, I'll tell you what, I was pretty happy when General Suleiman got killed at the Baghdad airport by Griffs. Well, I'll tell you what, the Griffs saved my bacon multiple times, and they were superb airmen. And speaking of rotary wing there, Josh, we used almost all Apaches in the South. We were a little too far for the Cobras. And we had what I just called Apaches on my shoulders when we would be moving through a neighborhood. And it was, the book is Checkerboards.
That's it, 312 Checkerboards.
I believe we saw them. Thanks, as Jason. Well. Yeah, right on.
And Adam, I agree. Part 2, we'll have part 2, and I think part 3, maybe part 4, because I swear to God, this has been 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm like, I don't even have to pee. I see this movie reel in my head.
I tell you what, incredible. The story when I fly with the airlines, the guys next to me, a lot of them are military. And so, hey, thank you, Nicole. What a great thing. That's actually one of my kids. But when you're going through this whole thing and you're, have such a civilian background as me, with both Marines and civilian, you realize that, we're all the same when we need to be. When you step up, you step up, and it's like nothing changed. I was falling back on training I had at the basic school, which almost kills me to say that, but it was. I mean, we are company in the assault. We're company in the assault at night. My God's sake, watch the flanks. We're digging the Iraqis into these positions, and we had Marine Lance Corporals, E3s, like 19 years old, going over there and taking charge of like 100 Iraqi soldiers, barking out orders about how to set up, aiming stakes, dig foxholes, put up obstacles, drag all this debris and wire in front of you so they can't bum rush you, and get it done. And the Iraqis were in awe of them. I could not believe it.
Well trained.
Oh my God. I always loved the Marine Corps, but I was absolutely floored at the incredible bravery of these young men. I mean, they accepted their death like that. But as long as they were next to each other when it happened, fighting the good fight, it was amazing. And we had the F-18s helping us. We had the F-16s. We had F-15s. We even had a British Tornado come by and drop with us. And there's actually a famous quote I put in the book, famous, to us, and that was that the Brit checked in with the AWAC, and the AWAC, we were on the same freak at the time, and I hear that a couple tornadoes check in, and I'm like, oh, I love tornadoes, man. Those are bitching airplanes, and he's asking them if they want to go work with the Brits or offers them the opportunity to come work with us. And he says, yeah, the Brits are following a pretty strict rules of engagement. The Marines, however, have a much more liberal interpretation. They're dropping every day. Dropping mean we're doing airstrikes every day. And he goes, they're dropping every day. What do you want? And the Brits go, yeah, mate, I think we'll work with the Marines. And they came over to us, and I was just like, all right, man, get some,
bring it on, cuz.
And they were flawless. They do their jobs well, and everybody pulled together, and all we all get parochial, especially we're here, a couple Marines talking about this, we all get parochial, but no, because the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, all took their turn saving us. Yeah. Even the Brits, even that tornado, that was a particularly close strike where one of those were ducked down in the ditch going, we're going to get overrun, drop, and they took out the group that was coming at us. And you can't badmouth any of the other services anymore. It's like took all the fun out of it, because everybody except the Coast Guard was there helping us, and I guess they were minesweeping, So I mean, and as we'll talk about, some other time in the North, we did a particular strike on.
Hold that thought. I'm going to replay this. That's going to be in part 2 because that's another 20-minute story. I'm going to show you this. This is my favorite picture from Iraq. One of the Marines with a sense of humor, right?
That is hilarious.
And so my buddy's got a Humvee. It's got this is what we drive to breakfast in, and he honored that picture and put Iraqi photo booth smile wait for flash on the back of his Humvee.
Is that a Russian gun in there?
No, it's a 50, but it's got the big muzzle brake thing on it.
That looks like the same. We call them the bellows on the front of the Dishkas.
Yeah, it does kind of look like that. But no, that's
the barrel doesn't. Yeah,
it's always kind of fun. But listen, you get a layover over here in Fort Worth so I can take you out for a beer, my friend. And,
hey, I got friends in Fort Worth, man. I'll gladly come out there. We can hang for a while.
Sluggo, come hang out, man. This has been probably one of my most entertaining, best interviews ever. And I've got some software. I got to start breaking these things up into 10-minute segments because that one part you talked about, it really hit home. You got to accept your death. Once you accept your death, there really is no fear. And for 2 weeks, and I'd seen all the damage the IEDs had done in Iraq, and as the air boss out there, assistant air boss working with him. When I go to Afghanistan, I'm sitting there driving around and I'm thinking, man, I'm going to get blown up. I'm going to get blown up. I'm going to get blown up. I'm going to get burned.
Yeah.
And then this Navy chief's like, hey, sir, you believe in God? I'm like, yeah, I believe in God. And he goes, good. Go back tonight. Get on your knees. Pray to God that you die fast. And if you do that and accept the fact you will die, you will get hit this tour. And you accept that, the rest of the tour is going to go great. And I did that. And sure enough, man, I woke up next morning like 1,000 pounds off my shoulders. It was weird.
Liberating. It's liberating, isn't it?
It really is a weird feeling. I don't think most people can actually touch that.
And no matter what religion any of the Marines were, we all got kind of our own style of spirituality on us over there, because you have one or two close calls, you're a lucky bastard. Passing about 100, there is something completely different going on.
Yeah.
And it happened. I'm sitting here right now. I shouldn't be here right now. None of my guys should be here. We should have been killed 100 times over, yet here we all are. It's like, so it kind of brings you back to whatever faith you got. It's like there's something going on.
Yep. Gunny real. Johnny
Sartin Real. Yeah, I'll tell you what, one of the greatest human beings ever. Absolutely ever. And I love him forever.
That is a great comment to have. Gunny, thanks for joining us tonight. For everybody that joined Tall Tales with Taco, spread it with your friends, share it, subscribe, hit like, and come back, because you never know when Sluggo is coming back on for another Slugfest. Man, it's been a real honor and pleasure, and I could see why Paco was like, you got to get Sluggo on. So
it makes those long flights pass pretty fast.
Yeah, damn straight. Well,
if I haven't turned the first officer into a quivering bowl of jello by the time we get to our arrival, then I haven't done my job.
You ever find? I mean, sometimes I'll tell some stories, but I've gotten to the point now. It's 16 years ago. If the guy's a civilian guy, it's like not even. I don't even tell him. I was in the Marines, but I don't even tell the stories half the time unless they start digging. If they ask the right questions, I'll tell some stories, experiences, but yeah.
The art about getting along with everybody is you got to hear the other guy's story.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story. You just got to get it out of them,
Yeah. Well, how to win friends, influence people, for sure. Well, listen, brother, you have a good one. I'm going to pop you off into the green room, and I'll see you in just a few minutes. I'm going to sign off for everybody else.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
I can't wait. We'll see you again next time. Hoorah.
Okay, we'll see you. Hoorah.
Stick around. Wow. Okay. So when Sluggo gets his book published, that's going to be the #1 topic. And I can't wait to read this. But we're going to have more discussions, I'm sure, and some great stories coming out. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot thank everybody. I was watching it fluctuate between 20 and 25, 30 people watching for 2.5 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. You all have a great night. And for all my Marines out there, happy birthday. It's coming up next week. We're all going to have our 30-year younger pictures in profile of Facebook. Anyway, happy birthday. Happy 246. You guys have a great night. Until I see you, I think next Tuesday, I'm actually going up to go buy a 1973 AMC Jeep with a 106 howitzer on the back. So if I'm able to make my Tall Tales with Taco, I may have to slide it on the Marine Corps birthday, which will be November 10th. And that's when we'll have Tall Tales next week. You guys take care. We'll see you soon. I've got one goodbye with my friend Michael Costanza has made for me. And I will sign off. You guys have a great night. Until next Tuesday. Adios, hasta luego. Auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss, shesheneo, au revoir. Domarigato gozaimashita no shinde o kudasai. Ciao. Arrivederci. Tashakor. Assalamu alaikum.